When I talk about podcasting, when people ask, should I have a podcast? I always ask, what purpose will the podcast serve for you as the creator? It's just who's in the driver's seat. And one is like trust and credibility and visibility.
I actually feel like this platform of podcasting has actually introduced me to some of my closest friends.
Really?
My grown-up adult friend world.
I love
It is
that.
unbelievable.
They say the happiest people are the most curious because if you're a know-it-all, usually it does not bode well for your overall happiness because there's nothing left to learn.
Living in the moment, let's have some fun.
Hi, I'm Aimee Rickabus, and welcome back to the Manage Her, the show where we explore what it really means to lead, not just in business, but in our homes, our health, our relationships, our communities, and ultimately ourselves. Because leadership isn't something women need to learn. It's something women have been doing all along. The question is, how do we recognize it, strengthen it, and use it to build the life we actually want? Today, we're continuing our July series on podcasting as thought leadership with a question that matters now more than ever. What if the fastest way to become a thought leader isn't writing another social media post, but having better conversations? Because today, everyone is creating content. Very few people are creating connection, and that difference changes everything. In a world filled with algorithms, AI, and endless scrolling, trust has become one of our most valuable forms of currency. People aren't just looking for information. They're looking for people they trust. And podcasting has become one of the most powerful ways to build that trust, one authentic conversation at a time. So the question we're managing today is, how can women use podcasting to become trusted thought leaders instead of simply creating more content? Today's guest is Allison Hare. As a leadership coach, speaker, and podcast host, Allison has spent years helping professionals build influence through authentic conversations rather than performative branding. Today, we're exploring why podcasting has become one of the most powerful leadership tools available and how women can use their voices to build trust, authority, and opportunity. Let's get started. Allison, I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be so much fun.
Woo! I'm excited to be here. We're gonna have a great time.
Wow. So you've kind of been on the forefront of this whole podcasting thing. You've been around in this world for quite some time. How many years have you been doing this?
7 years. And it's funny because when I started my podcast, it was 2019, and I thought I was late to the game. And now, because so much has proliferated and podcasting itself has become so incredibly influential, like podcasts literally won the last election. There's more money being poured into podcasts. It's become easier to podcast. But I think even just as women, it's proliferated more into video, but audio, like from a female perspective. This is how women get stuff done. They are taking their kids to whatever, they're doing laundry, they are listening and they're consuming stories and information while they're doing other stuff. You know, the ultimate multitasker.
Yeah, I know I sure am. I'll be in my kitchen listening to a podcast while I'm cooking or doing whatever task needs to be done. It's so nice to have the opportunity to take in that other women's knowledge, wisdom, stories in a way that I feel like we've lived in such a socially isolated culture for so long in our nuclear families. I feel like since the 1950s, television and everything television was this media that was kind of one directional. And I do feel like with podcasting, it has a little bit more of an interface with it where you can reach out to the podcasters. These are real people, they go live and those kinds of things. I know you were live today.
I was.
So it's more interactive. So we're getting back to this kind of interactive form of media and storytelling that we really haven't had since we sat around the campfire and told stories to one another.
I think IRL has really made a big comeback. And when it comes to podcasting, I mean, you're right, TV is a one-way medium, but podcasting, generally speaking, is a one-way medium. But because the technology has made it easier to engage and interact, and the kind of work that I do is how do you make a podcast engaging and interactive and, have a bidirectional relationship with your listeners and with your audience? It's made it a lot more accessible. I do find that, like the Surgeon General said, that we are in a loneliness epidemic. And I actually think that we have over optimized ourselves. So when you think of biohacking and optimizing every single aspect of it, where it was like, I'm going to take this on my own. And what happened is we ended up kind of losing the opportunity to connect with others because we're so focused on getting the next job, the next whatever, optimizing our bodies in a way where we've kind of disconnected from each other. And I think collectively, as somebody who's got a podcast surrounded around cultures, I'm kind of tapped into, I think what people are looking for is a way back to each other. And the podcast community aspect of it has been a really interesting development of people wanting to come back to each other and be part of a solution of a movement. It's been kind of exciting to watch and be part of.
I
I don't know
couldn't
if you
agree
feel
with
that
you.
way, Amy.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
agree with you more. I was actually looking to see if there was some sort of podcaster convention because I think, my gosh, we would have so much fun together. Back in the
Oh,
olden
I'll
days, there
tell you
was this
about them all,
mommy.
Amy. There are a
What?
lot of them.
Oh,
There are a
there's a
lot
lot
of
of them.
them.
I know. I need to
Yeah.
go because I went to this mommy blogger convention back in like 2009 and it was a hoot. And like, I think that would be, female podcaster convention could be an absolute, I mean, unbelievably fun experience.
There used to be a podcast conference for women called She Podcasts. And I think COVID really hurt it. That was the first time I went was 2019 to that one. And Amy, it was so insane because I was just a few months into podcasting and I go to this conference not knowing anybody. It was a last minute thing. And I walk around and everybody can talk. And because it was all female, there was a level of safety where you would be riding down an escalator with a total stranger and say, "Hey, do you want to grab lunch?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, let's get to know each other." It was a really interesting space. There's a podcast conference called Podcast Movement in September in New York City that I am applying to speak at, and that one is one of the biggest in the world.
I want to go. That sounds like so much fun. That would be a
Yeah.
blast. How cool is that, Allison? So you
Yeah.
coach leaders, right? What do you think that happens
I coach
psychologically? Yeah, a
founders.
lot leaders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens
Yeah.
psychologically when someone begins sharing their voice consistently?
What happens internally or what happens in the world?
I mean, in both ways, because I think for me, there's been a profound internal change as well.
Oh, I want to hear about it. What was the
Yeah.
internal change for
Well,
you?
for me, it's interesting, but the more I do this, I think I'm on like my 73rd. I think you're like 73 or something like that as far as
Okay.
episodes. And the more I do this, the more confident I get as a person. I think when I
Mhm.
walk into a room now, people are like, "Hey, wait, who are you? You have main character energy," kind of thing. And I think that that comes with the confidence of, I don't know, showing up and being on camera, seeing and watching yourself speak. I think that you do become a better speaker by speaking in front of a camera all the time consistently.
Yeah.
But also knowledgeable. I think my next book really reflects the journey that I've been on as a woman for the last year as a podcaster. A lot of the stories that are woven throughout the book are experiences and ideas that I've been exchanging with other women. So there's some sort of synergy that happens with this as well, a synergy of ideas.
I'm curious about the confidence piece of, doing this 73 times, and kudos to you. Most people don't get to 73. I'm curious for you, do you feel like the confidence is just reps, or do you think it is from something else?
Well, definitely repetition is amazing. And it's every time you show up, it's almost like going to yoga. You're going to go practice. You're going to
Yeah.
continue to refine. You're going to get better. You're going to refine your systems, your processes, your scripts, your ideas, how you present. And other podcasters I've spoken to have talked about this process of refining and changing their podcasts as they have evolved with their shows. Women like Erin Washington, she started
Mhm.
out, and I forget what her original show was called, like something and margaritas, and then she became
Yes.
sober. She went sober and she's like, "Who am I? Who's my what is my show now?" And she kind of went through this whole finding this new authentic version of herself that is even more powerful than what she first came with.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? I've had Erin Washington on my show when it was the margarita thing, and what I find and I wondered if this has been your experience. when I work with founders, these are people that are established in their world. They're incredibly smart and accomplished. They're confident in their field and they are trying on something new with a podcast. I find that when people first come to the mic and they're established, like they are bosses in their own world, and they show up to the mic, and it's natural to mimic what you may already hear. So whether it's Mel Robbins or Diary of a CEO or Jay Shetty or whoever it is, you almost naturally take that on. And what happens is you end up being a watered down version of something that already exists. And so when I work with people, what has been really, really interesting is I don't spend a ton of my time teaching people how to podcast. Most of my time is spent welcoming people back home to themselves. And so a lot of the times behind the scenes is, can I really say that? Because they're trying to polish off the edges, and especially when they are working in a corporate setting or they are working in a professional setting, they need to put themselves together in a way that is going to be palatable. They don't want to offend anybody. And I feel really strongly that it's important to have a point of view. It doesn't mean that you have to be Andrew Tate and go on the offense and just be kind of trash people. But I do think having a point of view is more important than anything, because we're in a trust recession. And I think with AI and just people that are online that are so overly polished that we're done with it. Like, we want the real. We want people to share how they really, really feel, because it almost feels like a banner, like a lighthouse of like, hey, you're okay. I got you. And I'll give you an example if that's okay, Aimee, but started podcasting in 2019 when I worked in corporate. So I worked for Salesforce, DocuSign, ADP, so all Fortune 500 companies in a corporate sales role. So when I started, I worked really, really hard to make sure I was very, very neutral. And then when I left corporate and I realized I didn't have to keep it so neutral, I found that when I was trying so hard to not offend people that may not agree with me. And that was exactly the wrong approach. The right approach was help your people find you. Like, there are people out there that are literally on their knees praying right now for somebody to help them, that only you can help them. Like, you know how to help them like the back of their hands. They don't know you exist yet. So when you show up to a mic and actually say what you're feeling, again, with decorum, right? Unless your thing is to offend. And then by all means, go, you do you. But that's how people find each other. But people are not interested in the overly polished. They're interested in what's really on your heart. And so being able to share the impactful things that you have while exposing your edges is where the magic happens and you grow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so true. It's absolutely, and I've heard it from my girls that I've had on the show. I've heard it from my other friends who are podcasters. When you really find your authentic voice, your audience finds you. And when I was
Exactly.
in film school, I remember my mentor, he wrote Kiss of the Spider Woman, and I did documentaries that were like banned in the United States. And he always said, "You know what? I don't care if people hate me. Worse than being hated is people who have no feeling about you at all."
Yeah.
And as a writer, he was kind of right. If you want to elicit love from people, you really have to dig into that real, authentic, raw place of yourself and create art from that place of yourself that might be uncomfortable for some people.
Yeah. You'll attract the people. And there's nothing wrong with repelling the wrong people. And I think, especially when you have a podcast that is tied to your personal brand, whatever that might be, whether you have a business or not, there's something to be said about the trust factor that happens, that people listen. And if you post on social media, they're not going to spend 20 grand with you because they saw a 7-second reel. They're going to want to know, are you legit? And so the long form content of a podcast allows people to experience what it's like to work with you. What are your values? Are they aligned? Do they make you think? Do they change how you think? Do they change your mind about things? Do they open new doors that weren't there? And that part is so exciting when you have people, and you probably know this, Aimee, but people that are literally changed, like people take you as a companion. Like you become a companion for people when they are on a run or they are running errands or they're on a commute to work or they got in a fight with their spouse and they're went out to blow off steam and they're listening to a podcast where you become this trusted voice that there are people that you have probably listened to for years and years that you probably spend more time with a podcaster than you do your own kids, just because of the length of time that they're in your ears. It's a really interesting and kind of an honorable place.
You're so right. It's so true. Well, so many of the women that they believe that they need to become experts before they deserve a microphone. What would you say? Have you found this to be true?
I would say no, and it depends, but mostly no. I think that if you, like, you're a mom of 6, right? Would you say you're an expert at being a mom?
Yes. I would say I
Good.
have a PhD plus, maybe a double PhD.
And you probably are a few steps ahead, but even if you didn't feel that way, even if you felt like you were drowning every day trying to figure out this thing, like why is it so hard? You're probably a few steps ahead from somebody else. That doesn't mean that you need letters at the end of your name to call yourself an expert. So I think even just the expertise, usually that is a stalling tactic and sometimes a way of, they say perfectionist is interchangeable with procrastination. And usually that is just something that is fearing. But again, think about that person on their knees praying for help, that you are literally blocking blessings, from this person, from impacting them, that you showing up as you are. And think about some of the podcasters that you might love, or even just personalities, even if it's on social media, that are broken as hell and you just love them. you know?
Totally. They're
Yes.
interesting, right?
Yes, you have a platform. I think it's a one-to-many platform. I personally feel like nobody has your perfect blueprint of wisdom, experience, knowledge, perspective, the lens in which you see the world. And when you filter things through that, again, you become a lighthouse that people allow, your voice can liberate people.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of lean into who you really are and know that you're enough.
Absolutely. Have you found that found yourself more fully through your voice during these 7 years of being a podcaster?
You know what's so crazy? The answer is yes. It's always going to be an iterative yes every single time. I mean, episode 1 is going to be different from episode 3, and episode 300 is going to be episode from episode 30 and episode 100. They're always iterating again with the repetitions piece of it. I'll tell you a story. Earlier this year, I was at a conference and there was a guy there. It was a business conference that happened to be a psychic. And he was like one of these psychics that apparently is somehow connected to the Dalai Lama and has documentaries made about him. And I met him on the first night. He was just a great guy. Of course, a guy like that is going to have the most interesting stories. And a few days later, so I met him on the first night. We had a great conversation. And a few days later, I ran into him and I was like, Chris, how is, the event going? It was his first time going and it had been, I'd been a few times. He's like, he looked at me like he saw a ghost and he said, Allison, I've been looking for you. And I said, why? And he said, can I show you something? I said, yeah. So he pulls out a notebook, and on his notebook, he's got a ton of notes, from that. And at the very top, it says, it is safe to be seen. It is circled and it's starred. And he said, this came for you. This message came for you. And I was like, what? What do you mean? I could not be more visible, Aimee. I could not be more visible. And he said, you are safe to be seen. I told him, and I was like, Chris, I couldn't be more visible. Like, I'm everywhere. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, podcast. I'm everywhere. And yet I feel like I've been hiding. And I feel like I have still conditioned myself with so much polish that it never goes away. And it feels like the first half, and I think this might be, I have a theory for our lives, especially as women that grow up in a certain age, whatever, that like the first half of life is becoming what you're supposed to, whatever society says. The other half is unbecoming, where it's like, wait a minute, that was all bullshit, wasn't it? And you realize who you truly are. And so I always feel like there is such a deeper excavation. I was really stunned by this guy that I didn't know. And he told me, he said, Allison, he said, I met you on the first night and you were wearing this yellow dress. And it was, and he was like a gay old dude. I'm not, he wasn't trying to hit on me or anything. Although hashtag still got it, never lost it. But so I had this, he's like, you had this effervescent way about you. I'd never met anybody like you. And then I looked for you. I literally looked for you for 2 days and I couldn't find you. We were in one room with 50 people and I'm wearing like bright colors and I knew what he was talking about. And I thought, like, again, there is so much deeper that needs to go. And so it is just like life. I'm always learning and I always feel like, how could I pull off my skin even more? I feel like I'm busy oversharing anyway, but it feels like there's deeper excavation that's needed.
Absolutely. It's funny that you got that message from
Isn't
him
that
because in
crazy?
writing my second book that I'm writing right now, the message that finally came through for me was that I had spent my life because of my childhood and like early childhood programming, it was safer, always felt safer for me to be needed than to be seen. And
Wow.
whoa, yeah, and I didn't come to this realization on my 47th birthday. I was in a pickle with my marriage, really in a pickle, and really at that breaking point of like, is this going to work at all? We're both like, I don't know, it's just not working.
Yeah.
And so I went and did an intensive EMDR session
Nice.
and got some really important words that came through. And one of them was a feeling of insignificance that came through from my childhood programming. And how can you be a significant other if you feel insignificant? So here I was on the verge of the breakup of my second marriage. And I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to do? And what came through in such a big way was that I had chosen partners that that needed me rather than could see me.
Wow.
So a part of my work was allowing myself to be seen by my partners and see my needs and advocate for myself. And a big part of this book that I'm finishing right now is that work, that deeper work that we as women will do not only for ourselves, but for generational trauma.
Wow. Did you feel like you were
So
hiding?
I absolutely, but I didn't know
You didn't know.
until I was standing in the shadows.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
no idea. But once it became into my frontal cortex, once I could see it, it came to my conscious mind, I was like, "Oh, you're so right. 100%. My behavior is this is 100% my behavior. I could always show up and be seen by my children, by my friends, by my parents. But for some reason, within my marriages, I couldn't be seen. I just wanted to be helpful.
Isn't it
I
interesting?
just wanted to be
I've got
needed.
this theory, and the theory is that I mean, it's not like a groundbreaking theory, but like we don't really know how we come across. And so, like I feel like I'm really good at strategy for other people, but for myself, I have no clue. I'm like, how are we so like ignorant to how we are when we're with ourselves all the time. And so you need trusted people. That's why I'm like, I always hire the coach or the mentor that's going to help me, that you trust, or even having people around you that can be a good mirror. So when people will, generously say, oh, you came across this way. And I'm like, thank you so much for saying that. You just don't know.
100%.
And
It's
we always think
so
everybody hates us. We always think that people think much worse of us than they do.
I don't know. I don't feel that way about people. I usually feel like people like me, but then at the same time, I think I'm always afraid to be the kind of person that they wouldn't wanna like.
I feel the same way. Like I feel very gregarious and I think I'm well liked, but I also, this came to me over the past few months too, that I don't have a lot of close friends because I have not let them in. because I have been so guarded. Like, this has been a whole shedding process, you know?
Well, this season of our life, I'm going to write is very much a big topic in my book. In fact, I just rewrote the introduction to the book yesterday, and I was really talking about how this phase of our life is about cultivation. And one of the things my father, and I write about this in the book, my father's 85 years old. And while I was writing this book on human potential, he confessed to me, I have no friends, he says.
Mm,
And he goes, I spent my life focusing on things that I thought were important and they weren't important.
mm.
And it's, how do we in this middle part of our lives start to really cultivate the things that are going to be really important at the end of our lives?
Yeah.
Those relationships with people, our children, our friends, our community, our legacy.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I think there's more, again, like we were talking about this in the beginning of just wanting to connect with each other and come back to each other. I think we have never been taught how to be a good friend. I think our models are friends where, you have these really delightful, great looking people that have nothing better to do than to hang out with the six of you, them and that our expectation of what a friendship should be. I've actually done keynotes on friendship as an adult because it was something that I um, felt like I was lacking in, and I was never lacking in friends. And if I needed something, I know who I would call. But when I was sad, I would be, I wouldn't know who to call. And I have an incredible marriage and a husband, like it's what I'm the most proud of is my marriage. With my husband, but the friendship thing, I'm really actively cultivating, to use your word, um, friendships to go deeper and to call people if I'm sad or need help instead of like, I got it together.
Oh, 100%. And it's so funny, but I actually feel like this platform of podcasting has actually introduced me to some of my closest friends,
Really?
my grown-up adult friend world.
I
It
love
is
that.
unbelievable. Like Chelsea Ann, who I had on my show, we like sister from another
I
mister.
love
And
it.
then Dr. Mara Matrani, oh my gosh. And it's amazing to meet people and maybe I met Mari in person before I had her on my show, but Chelsea and I have never even hugged each other.
Yeah.
And yet I know I can pick up the phone and call her anytime.
Yeah.
And she's right there. And it really is unbelievable. But I think when we put the intention, attention, time is currency, right? So we have
Yes.
a certain amount of our life. Really, the money is kind of a construct. What we really have is time. So we take that time and our focus and we put it on whatever garden we want to grow. So we plant hope in our little garden. This is my new analogy. This is the new book. And you plant hope, seeds of hope. I hope that I find some really amazing women to be friends with.
Yes.
And then we water that with love, a focus, and time, and we watch our garden grow, and it doesn't I feel like you are in the season where we finally have time for ourselves again. We kind
Yeah.
of get buried for, there's I feel like your 30s, it's not a time for friendship unless it's your mommy friends that you're co-raising,
Right.
little itty bitty kids together, and you're veterans of the war of toddlerhood. Um, but you then finally your children get to a place where you have time and you're like, wait, who am I? Where are all my friends?
Yeah,
What do I
you're
do for fun?
100% there. And I even think that the way we look at friendships, like I've had a lot of friendship experts on my show. I've had Daniel Byard Jackson on my show, who is just amazing at this. And what was interesting is that I went on social media and I said, hey, what are some problems you or questions you would love to have answered about adult friendships? And I was flooded. Like people really were struggling with questions over imbalance, like effort imbalance, right? The one that invites you to everything, or you're the one that is always initiating, they're not initiating back. Something happened, there's fallout, somebody is cold. What do you do in those situations? And the answer, at least from the research, is that you need to look at your friendships like you would a romantic relationship, that when things get tough, how do you dig in and get deeper. It's kind of
Mm.
like if my husband and I get in a fight or go through something really challenging. As we go through it, it's like the roots grow deeper and the top grows taller. And the same thing goes for friendships. And so at the end of last year, 2025, I had been estranged from a friend that was truly my best friend, has been through a lot with me, and somebody that I really, really cared for. And nothing major happened with it. It just kind of drifted. And I was like, I'm out. If you're not going to come over here, I'm not going to come over there kind of thing. We just kind of drifted apart. And I was kind of in the, I'm a fuck her. I ended up, we would text like here and there for like random things. And I just got up the courage and was like, "Hey, I would love to like get together and talk about and maybe like be friends again." And so we did. And we went on like a long 2-hour walk and just talked about everything and where I felt slighted or not, or what her perception was. And it was so like, I remember just, I'll get emotional now, just feeling such a relief to just say it out loud and not be afraid she would leave or that I would be too much or too emotional because I was guarding so much. And so I take a lot of responsibility for not wanting to be a burden. So I didn't talk to her about when I was upset.
I get that. I get that programming all the way. Absolutely. And then also maybe you were feeling like you just wanted, you weren't being seen. You didn't want to be seen by her. It sounds like you were finally letting her see you.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But also,
Yeah.
I don't know that I knew that that was who I was. Maybe I'm a lot softer than I come across. Maybe I
Well, you
need
probably
a lot
are.
more.
I find we usually are the opposite of what we convey to the
Yes.
world. I think the softest people are often the strongest are often the softest.
Yeah, that's
There's that,
true.
I see it in my husband very much. He comes across as this big, gruff, muscle man, and he's so soft.
Get it, Amy?
Get it? Oh, yeah, I did. I'm just so happy, like, it worked out too. I'm so happy that I was able to figure out what my participation was in our marriage so that we could stay together,
Yeah.
so that we could be happy, so that he could be happy and I could be happy and we could be friends and partners because we're really good together. It
Yes.
just we had to fix there's this one little thing that needed to be tweaked. And it was once it hit me, and I was able to communicate it. We actually did a medicine journey together
Solid.
and with this therapist, and she had us do all this homework, and we had this beautiful, you know, journey together, hours long journey together, and we were able to really work through and talk through all the things that we had been hiding from each other and all the feelings that were just that felt so sad, and the things that we were and it's funny because once you realize the other person is feeling the exact same way, it's like, "Oh,
That is so
why were
profound.
we isolating ourselves?"
Yeah. I
You
feel
know,
like,
we
Amy, if we lived in the same city, we would totally be friends and hang out. You
Absolutely. Oh
had
my
me a
gosh.
plant medicine journey.
Heck yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of the women that I meet are of the same caliber, and we're all kind of, high caliber women tend to be like into the plant medicine journeys. We tend to be into like, we go a little further and a little deeper than the normies out there. And I was thinking about that this morning, actually, how a lot of the things in my life that I hide from the kind of, normal worker bee type humans, I feel very comfortable talking to the guests that are on my show because I don't know, for some reason, people who aren't afraid to rise to the top are kind of just generally curious about life in general. We don't really approach it with fear. We're kind of more curious. And as you approach your friendships, I saw this thing recently and I loved it. It was about maintaining the curiosity in your relationship. You stay curious about him, he stays curious about you. But I also think within our friendships, as long as we maintain curiosity about our friends, I want to learn more about you. You
Yes.
want to learn more about me. There's this continued learning interest and ability to grow together.
Yeah, they say the happiest people are the most curious because if you're a know it all, usually it does not bode well for your overall happiness because there's nothing left to learn.
Yeah, when you know it all. I know
Right.
I married that one. That was my first husband. That was fun.
Now you know one more thing. This isn't working.
Yeah, one more thing then, honey. This isn't gonna work. So I'm sure you found this, but have you found that having conversations actually accelerate your expertise?
Yes, because I think the way my brain works anyway is that I look for words. I hear words and phrases that help teach me or help see things in a different way. I also feel like one thing that I may have fought is my natural ability to pick up cultural themes and ties and put that forward in my podcast. I mean, it is called Culture Changers. It was always about that, but the podcast has gone through some iterations where I thought, all right, well, I guess I'm doing this now. And then, it's had a few names. And it's been Culture Changers twice and been a couple of other different names. I think the podcast for me feels like the most expansive. It feels like I am completely in my element behind this microphone. And for better or worse, I remember I would be in corporate and I'd be sitting at this desk and I would look and I'd say, all right, it's 3:53. Okay, I've got 7 minutes. All right, I got to power through. It was very constrictive when I was at corporate, but then I would be having a conversation with you during lunch on this mic and I'd be like, I felt like a full, flourishing human being. Whereas before I'm like, what am I doing? It felt like I was in the wrong lane and felt like I was in the wrong clothes that just didn't fit anymore. And I don't know that they ever did fit. It was like the yes feeling in my body and the no feeling in my body. And so being able to trust that, especially when it is your show or when it is your platform, that the more you kind of lean into what feels like a yes, the more fully expressed you become, the more free you become. And the more free you become with your voice, the more you liberate others who are also needing that freedom.
Yeah, aligning with your purpose
Yeah.
through your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and as we talked about, yeah, one thing I've noticed is that podcasting creates relationships, not and networks, but definitely relationships as well. And some of the people I've admired for years are now colleagues and friends because of my show.
Yes.
Have you had that be your experience as
Oh,
well?
100%. When I talk about podcasting, when people ask, should I have a podcast? I always ask, what purpose will the podcast serve for you as the creator? And usually it falls into four categories. It doesn't mean that it's one or the other, but it's just who's in the driver's seat. And one is like trust and credibility and visibility, where people are looking to be found and looking to share impact. The second one is a high value networking tool that I mean, having people on my podcast like Seth Godin and Mariel Hemingway and Brooke Baldwin and Jesse Itzler, like if you know who they are, they're big deals in their own circles. But just meeting some of those people have opened up doors, and those are only a few. There are doors that were opened to me because it's one thing like, hey, do you want to go have coffee with me? It's just you and me. But when you have a one to many platform, it changes. Like the message becomes something else where it moves and it transfers, which is a really powerful thing. So it's a high value networking tool. The third way is like a lead generator. It's not for everybody, but for some, it can be a lead generator because of the trust that's built through this. So the sales cycle collapses pretty quickly or moves faster. And then the fourth thing is a place to share your stories. And so having those foundational pieces kind of grounded in there allows doors to open you would not even imagine and opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mel Elsbeth of Mama What's Next, basically built her business around her podcast.
Yeah.
And she's become a voice for women over 40 who want to really define their brand and
Yes.
kind of find their voice. And it's really so cool. She was kind of, she wasn't anybody famous when she got, to get started. And it's just neat how we can transform, how this medium can help us transform other people and bring other ideas. I had no idea she kind of came from
Mhm.
the recruiter, corporate hiring kind of world, and she brought a really important message, which was AI is writing all the resumes and
Yeah.
it's reading all of the resumes. So, how are you going to be differentiated from the rest of the herd, when you're looking for a job? In a lot of ways, it's like, go to Allison, get your voice out there. You need to have a blog, you need to have a social media platform or a podcast or some other visibility medium where you can show your expertise. Because it really, having a resume just isn't enough now.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of interesting where I was thinking about, some people have AI read and digest their email and respond to them as well. So it's like
Mhm.
nobody's talking to each other, even for emails that you may labor over, and then it's being ingested and probably like misrepresented by AI. Sometimes when I read the digest, that I'm like, that's not what it said at all. It just doesn't quite have a context. So we are in an interesting time where people's foibles and flaws become endearing. I used to be a grammar police, and now I'll leave grammatical errors in my writing so they know I wrote it and that it wasn't written by AI. Because
Me too. Me
yeah,
too, and I try
I've
to, like,
tried.
I'm okay with even having typos in there when I send it to my editor. I want them to know, like, a real person typed this.
Yeah. Yeah, I've tried it to train AI to think like me, but it just doesn't. It doesn't write like me.
I don't think that I've tried and tried myself, and I will never will, because it will, and it doesn't have your brain dump. It doesn't have all of our stories and experiences. It doesn't have a way to access all that stuff.
Yeah.
So if it's trying to write your stories, it's just going to make up stories. It doesn't have your authentic
Yeah.
experience,
It'd be so
you know?
interesting to hear, let's see, like a year from now, if AI will get to the point where it does. Like I have a document of everything that I write, so all my emails. So sometimes I'll put it into AI and say, what are some ideas based on what I know? And sometimes it'll write and I'm like, ugh, it still doesn't sound like me. And so we're not using that. But I wonder if that will accelerate at some point where it does and it becomes indistinguishable. But for now, I'm celebrating the errors, the grammatical errors in this spelling stuff.
Absolutely. What AI assistant do you prefer?
Claude, how about you?
Oh, yeah, and that's the best one, honestly.
Oh,
Claude's great. I
it's
mean, I
so
still really do love
sophisticated.
chat. ChatGPT kind of has ingested a lot, like, my books and that stuff, and it's helps me actually. My usual process with my podcast is I'll do a quick Google Meet, like a 30-minute meeting, and kinda do a pre-interview, and then I'll take my notes and then get the AI notes,
Yeah.
pop it into my ChatGPT, and then it will help me come up with a draft of, like, the intro, the questions, and the
Yeah.
outro, 'cause it's basically been with me the whole show.
Right.
So it really has a good, I feel like, for that level of writing, yes, because it's just sort of like speed notes, as I go through. It's not really word for word that I use it. I'm able to interject me in between, but it kind of keeps me on point.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So today's online world, rewards speed and podcasting rewards depth. Why do you think depth is becoming such a competitive advantage?
Oh, what a great question. It is it is a depth. I think people say that nobody's got an attention span, yet we're going to ingest 6 seasons of Hacks in a weekend. Yeah, we want depth. We want to get lost in something. We want to hear the real. We want to be captivated for a longer time. So I don't buy that it is short. I mean, yes, my attention span has definitely been shortened, but I don't think that we are at risk at losing long form. And what's interesting, even from studies show from a podcast perspective, this will blow your mind. So, like under 30 minutes is ideal for generally most shows. 30 minutes to an hour is almost like a dead zone, but that's where most people's lengths is that way. Beyond that, where they're showing people are staying are over an hour. And so you'll see that people's podcasts, I mean, obviously you have the Joe Rogans, the Tim Ferriss, the Andrew Huberman of the world that have 2-3 hour podcasts. I mean, they are the pioneers of this. They've been doing this for over 20 years. So Rich Roll has really, really long podcasts and they do incredible work with it. You'll see that podcast episodes are creeping up just over an hour. And I think there is a bit of an appetite for it. Unless your show
Mhm.
sucks, unless your show is boring. There's no reason to
Oh,
keep going if you have said what you have said. And I think there is value for people that are on the go that want a quick 5 minute or 10 minute hit. If your show where you can deliver the goods in under 10 minutes. I also think that the days of teaching are over. And what I mean by that is like ChatGPT and Claude can now ingest that. So they find that instructional books have like fell off a cliff. However, the ones on stories are where people are really, really captivated. So it's an interesting time to see what the trends are doing.
it's such an interesting time. It really is. Well, I think when I have a guest on, and I do occasionally, I'll have a guest on and we'll just go like for a full hour and a half. And it's usually because we literally can't stop talking to each other. You know, one of those conversations where you're like, we really have other stuff to do. So we're going to have to wrap this up, even
Right.
though we could talk for like the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Versus sometimes you get a guest on and it's really hard to get them to go.
Yeah.
And that, and it's like getting a 30-minute segment out of them, which is like for me, I'm like, how can we not keep this going? But now that's why I do my pre-screening now with my guests because I want to make sure that I'm bringing on somebody that has a really compatible personality so that
Yes.
we can, chew it up because I want to chew it up.
Yeah.
That's what we're all missing in life is like those real conversations that girls have when we're just can't stop, and one idea and we're sparking ideas back and forth. That's the beauty of
It
it.
is so fun. It is so fun.
It really is. What advice would you give to someone who's afraid that nobody will listen?
Oh, I think you find your people. I think your people are out there. You need to talk to them and raise your flag. I think I would much rather have 30 listeners that are super fans than 1,000 of people that don't care, 1,000 downloads. I generally don't care about downloads or views. I care about engagement. Are you hearing from people? Are you hearing that people are being moved? Are they signing up for your thing or are they DMing you? That part to me feels like impact, and that's where the real influence is. So there's only one way to find out, and it is a long game too. Like there is maybe a romantic notion that once you turn on your podcast, you're going to be flooded with leads and it's going to be like the Rogan money is going to come. And that's not it. I think that the more you really hone in to what makes you unique and your unique voice, and that doesn't mean you have to have the most innovative idea. I mean, how many people are doing the same exact thing that Mel Robbins is talking about? How many people are helping people with anxiety and better habits? There are so many of them. But Mel leaned into what she knows and her own voice, whether you believe that or
Yeah.
not, or she has her own controversies too. But I think it is the same of like of really leaning into your own voice and knowing that there are people out there that desperately need to hear what you have to offer. If there weren't, you wouldn't be feeling that feeling in your belly going, I need to do this. I need to do this. If you don't have that feeling, don't do it. But I think that it is really, when it comes to a podcast, it really comes down to three things: budget, bandwidth, and burning desire. Sometimes if you don't have bandwidth, budget can fix it. But if you don't have a burning desire, then none of it matters. And so the burning desire is, what is the message you have to share? And often it feels like I feel like I have this message or this insight or experience or this wisdom that people are out there struggling. I don't know how to get it to them. And I know like it's one of those things that becomes like a knock. And it may not just be a podcast. Maybe it is a book or speaking on a stage or writing in a Substack. It can be all of those things or none of those things. It can be some way of doing that. But if that knock keeps getting louder, answer it. it means that you are being pushed out of your comfort zone to raise your flag and let people know that you're there.
Oh, and it is scary to do that. I mean, it
Yeah.
really, I remember. Do you remember your first time?
Yes.
Were you scared, like, shitless?
So I had a microphone. Of course, I had the Blue Yeti, which okay, so let me explain the Blue Yeti. The Blue Yeti is marketed as the number one podcast microphone. It is marketed that way, but it is the worst. Everyone starts with it. It sucks so bad. It picks up everything. It picks up like a fire engine a mile away. It picks up everything, like a cat meowing all the way downstairs. It picks up everything. It sucks. So I had the Blue Yeti, but I couldn't figure out how to plug another one in for a guest. So we were here. So my first episode, I'm here and she's here. And we're talking
Oh,
into the
one
same
mic.
mic, like with our mouths almost kissing to it was awful. Was it a great interview? Probably not. She was awesome, but you just get better. You just get better and you just get it over with. You get the shitty parts over with. It's like I tell my kids, they're like, I'm not good at it. And I was like, suck it. You have to, you're going to suck starting at anything. You just get better by trying.
Yeah, and showing up. You gotta show up. It's in the practice. I know
Yes.
I have the 4 Ps, so it's for me, it's finding your purpose, bringing your presence to it, practice, of course, and
Yes.
then people. And it's like if you can get all of your 4 Ps working together, then
Yes.
you're gonna find your place.
Yes.
You're gonna be able to cultivate your beautiful garden. But that's from when you were talking about yours. I'm like, oh, I have my Ps, you have your Bs.
No, mine are P's. My 4 P's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, B though, right?
No,
No,
it was
P.
P.
P. You're P too.
Yeah, yep,
Okay,
all
I got
P's.
4.
I love the
Fantastic.
alliterations.
So how do you help people move past perfection and simply begin? Because that really is the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few different offers. So I help people in a 12-week launch program. So I only do one-on-one work. Every once in a while I'll do a group thing. But I'll do podcast audits for existing podcasters that are not, maybe they're not where they want to be and they are trying to promote their business or do something and they haven't figured out why they're not having the results that they want. So I'll do a podcast audit. I will do brand advisory as well, where I'll work with somebody for a year. And then we not only work with the podcast, but we make sure that we're tracking and measuring and experimenting growth in all of the marketing and the branding assets. So we make sure they're all consistent. And it is fun because it's like having a thought partner that you are not alone, but we are looking at everything together around engagement and getting the results that you want. But most anything is starting, just starting. And that can be where you can, use your phone and record a voice memo and throw it up on Spotify if you wanted to. I don't really recommend that, but I do recommend the practice of it, but it is just getting started.
It really is. Yeah, for me, it was a business coach who was like, I'd finished my book and she's like, it's time. You need to do your podcast. And I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do a video podcast.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what would you feel comfortable doing? Or I don't know how to do a just audio podcast, but I went to film school. So I felt like if I could come from what I know, which is film. And so I actually had my first few episodes. Actually, I think my first maybe 12 or 15 episodes, I brought my friends in, my crew from film school.
Made it more
And
comfortable.
yeah, I'm like my friend Martin Varro, who still edits all my stuff, came in with his camera and we had an extra guy and we had sound and, lights and the whole thing. And, it was a real production, but that gets expensive. So I'm so happy. Actually, he recommended Riverside to me and was like, hey, why don't you try? I was going to be in Hawaii last year and he's like, try Riverside and see if you like shooting with that. And I sure do. It brings my production cost way down.
Yeah, it's so much easier. And I do have I put together a podcast equipment and getting started guide. And if you're interested, you can go to AllisonHare.com/equipment. So if it is something that you are looking to get started and just some simple steps, and then the equipment side, so you're not like in a Google rabbit hole of comparing all kinds of equipment, not the Blue Yeti, you're welcome to grab it for free.
Allison, that's so helpful because I feel like that was one of the things that really freaked me out was,
The
okay,
equipment.
well, what do I need?
Yeah. Yeah.
There were a lot of questions about getting started. There were a lot of, it seemed like very technical. The technical side seemed to be the thing that kind of was my reason why I shouldn't start doing it. But once I pushed past that, now I'm so happy that, I show up to my studio. I'm the producer, I'm the writer, I'm the talent, I'm the makeup artist.
You're doing it all.
I come in here, I get the lights set up, I
Yeah.
get the, lights, camera, action, and it feels good to be so self-reliant and then, be able to do this all by myself,
I think the
honestly.
equipment and even Riverside itself has come so far where it's made it so much easier. So the barrier to entry is pretty low. Like I could record something on my phone and upload it to Spotify. Like I could be live today if I wanted to. It's really easy to get a podcast out there. It's a little bit harder to have it stay. And so how do you have longevity and sustainability? Based on my experience, it really is making sure that you're dialed in on your strategy and why have a podcast at all. Sometimes people will say, well, my friends all say I'm really funny. I should have a podcast. Or sometimes people will say, I just want to use my stories to inspire people. But usually you're done after like episode 5 because you've run out of stories and people aren't, if it's not in service to somebody else, right? It's just you talking. Like dialing that part in is why I put this document together or this resource together.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is definitely the tricky part. I think about people who do solo casts and I think, "Oh, couldn't do that because don't feel like I have enough to stay all by myself." I feel like I'm constantly exploring an idea, and I want to bring somebody in that can help me expand on this idea, and for me, it's how do you think podcasting is going to affect the women's movement now that we have a place to really share our voices?
Oh, the interesting thing is that males still dominate podcasts by a long shot. What I find interesting is that there has been a rise in women over 50 podcasting, which I'm like, hell yes. I think
Hell
we're at
yeah.
an interesting moment right now when it comes to females and podcasting. And I know we talked about this before we started recording, but like I said, podcasts are what won the election. A lot of people have, if everyone has a mic, who do you know who to trust? How do you know who to trust? And I think now the more women who are speaking up, who are advocating for ourselves, who are not shutting up, um, the more women we have that are bravely showing up at the mic, even though they're afraid of being judged, they're afraid of blowback, they're afraid. I mean, I'll tell you, Aimee, people are so scared to change their title on LinkedIn from VP of whatever big company to consultant or to something else. And the same thing goes for what are people going to say? And usually the people that would trash you are not the people that are going to pay your bills. They're like Judy from accounting. You don't even really,
Mhm.
you wouldn't want to hang out with Judy from accounting anyway. But they're the people that are literally stopping you from changing the world. And so
Oh,
having a
yeah.
voice and being able to do that, I think the sky is the limit here. And I think that women's voices are desperately needed to share our experiences, to advocate for other women, for women's rights. I shared with you before that certainly women's reproductive rights has been reversed, and there has been catastrophic results as a result, lots of death and lots of uh, unspeakable things are happening for women, especially women of color. What we're also finding is that with the rise of Christian nationalism, there is a growing movement of women. So if you think of trad wives, do you know about the trad wives? So trad wives
Yes,
are
I do.
traditional wives. So It is different from a stay-at-home mom, but like a trad wife is almost like a political pawn almost, where in the religious sect. Now, I know this sounds fringe. It is no longer fringe. I thought it was, and I would laugh it off. And now it is growing in popularity, which is why our voices matter this much more. And so, what's happening with Christian nationalism, if you think of Christian fundamentalism, the man is the head of that household. Wife is supposed to be submissive, take care of the kids. Children are supposed to be obedient. If children aren't obedient, they get disciplined. If wife is not submissive or deviates from it, she also gets punished. And that is in order to have favor with God, right? And so I've done a lot of episodes with this. I've talked to a lot of people that are experts in this field, and we're seeing it because it's being shown on CNN, on all of these things. And then you have people like, oh, what is her name? She's got 3 different names talking about how um, the 19th Amendment should be rolled back, that there should only be one vote per household, the husband, to vote on behalf of that. So I don't mean to be an alarmist, but it is alarming. And that is why my podcasts exist and why I speak up about this, because it sounds so fringe, but it is. I thought that Roe v. Wade would never be rolled back, and we were blindsided. And I'm just telling you, this is not something to put your head in the sand about.
Totally. And I wasn't super surprised at the decision with Roe v. Wade, but what I am
I was.
surprised with is that this should have been an amendment. The fact that no one has brought an amendment forward to protect religious freedom or medical freedom in America. I think medical freedom is an absolute human right. The Nuremberg Code, very much defined that after the Nazis, that, you must be able to make medical decisions for yourself, and it's, to me, the fact that on neither side, not the Democrats or the Republicans or the independents, that nobody has come forward and said, let's make an amendment to the Constitution that protects people's medical freedom in a free country called America. That's what scares me.
Yeah.
That's the thing that freaks me out, because maybe it wasn't the Supreme Court's place to rule on that. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. It should be handled in the legislative branch. But hello, I hear crickets from the legislative branch. No one's doing anything. And for me, you really, especially as we move forward in technology, the world is about to change drastically. We are going to move by 2030, the world is going to be a very different place. I'm in technology. I'm in digital transformation. That's my day job. And so I've seen how fast technology is moving.
Yeah.
And with AI and biometrics and all of these things, if we don't legalize our freedom in this country, we will have systems that make this they will become a cage for us. Not a place of freedom. It'll become a cage. It'll become a monitored cage. So I think one of the things I'd love to see women rise up for is medical freedom in America. And I would love to see us march on Washington, D.C. and say, hey, we're not going to stop until we have medical freedom in this country. And we want an amendment. We want something that cannot be overturned in a court. We want a law. We wanted a constitutional amendment. So for me, that's where, I think we are powerful, we are plentiful, and now we have a very powerful medium for spreading ideas amongst one another, which is podcasting. As thought leaders, I think this is what we're supposed to do. I think this is what God wants us to do, honestly. I really do. Because my God is a God of freedom. My God believes and trusts in me, and I believe and trust in God. I'm not afraid of God.
I'm
I
glad.
love God, right? It's a whole different thing, though. It's really, there are the people who fear God, and then there are the people who just feel the love of God.
Yes.
God is love. That's in the Bible too.
I agree with that. Yes.
So I just love you. You're amazing.
Oh,
So
thank
you've
you.
had countless conversations over the years. Has there been one interview that changed you?
Yes, I interviewed this guy, and his name is Chris Shembra. He's been on my show 4 times. all of them have changed me, and I've interviewed some really amazing people. But Chris, I often ask a signature question, which is, what do you know that you wish other people could know? And when I asked Chris this, and at the time I was really at the height of my burnout, I said, Chris, what do you know that you wish other people could know? And he didn't skip a beat. He said me.
Oh, I
And
love that.
I got emotional and literally started crying. And he's like, what's going on? And at the time I was like new in my podcast. I'm like, nobody knows me either. And I just have never been so caught off guard in my own show. And I so appreciated his honesty. And he is just one for refreshingly and surprising honesty with his show.
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like we learned so much. We learned so much from our guests. I feel like we get more from being the hosts, I really do think, than when we're on someone else's show as the guest.
It's like free
Um
therapy.
it honestly, it really is. It's so good. And if any woman out there listening, launched a podcast tomorrow, not necessarily to become famous, but to become more visible and intentional, how do you think that would change her career and maybe even her life?
Her career in
Mhm.
every way possible. So if it is having influence, authority, impact, and income, it helps on every different way. So if you think of like an obelisk, an obelisk, or even like a broadcast tower, like it broadcasts out and it reaches so many people, and just, even the confidence of being able to do something, just like you said, but having that message spread. So my podcast is called Culture Changers. And I always say the only way culture changes is when you take these messages and you share them in your own circles, in your own communities. You can hear it and be like, oh, that was interesting, and go on with your life. But when you share it, whether it's the podcast episode, or I was listening to Aimee's podcast and she said this, and I don't know if I agreed with it, or, she introduced a new idea that really opened my mind. Like, that's how culture changes. Like, it is such a ripple effect that can open opportunities, whether they're career opportunities, relationship opportunities, friendships. The sky is the limit once you do that. And even just having a one-to-many platform like this is just very consequential.
100%. It really is. It ripples out. You're right. It's not, you and I could sit down at coffee and have this conversation without anyone else listening to us. Or we can sit down with our microphones on and we can record this conversation, and the whole world has the opportunity in perpetuity to listen to this conversation.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
That can be scary for some, but the right people will
I mean,
find you.
I think it's awesome. I actually think about, wow, will my great-grandchildren be able to listen to my podcast? I mean, if they wanted to, will it
Yeah.
still be out there?
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, possibly. So, Allison, if our listeners are looking to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can go to AllisonHare.com is probably the easiest, or find me on Instagram, Allison__hair, like the rabbit. And if you do go to my Instagram, please DM me. Tell me Aimee sent you. Tell me you heard me there. I love talking to people. And again, the free resource, if they wanted to get started and figure out what to do, they can go to AllisonHare.com/equipment.
I love that. You are just the absolute best.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
You're
so much
great.
for being here. You're just awesome. Thank you. My new friend, Allison Hare,
My
thank you
new best
so
friend.
much for being on the show. You're so cool. One of the themes we return to often on The Manager is that leadership begins long before someone gives you a title. It begins the moment you decide your voice matters. Podcasting isn't just about microphones or downloads. It's about creating a space where ideas can be explored, relationships can be built, and people can discover who you really are. Whether your audience is 10 people or 10 million, every conversation has the potential to change someone's thinking, including your own. So if today's episode has you wondering whether your voice is worth sharing, I hope you'll take this as your invitation, because women have never lacked wisdom. Sometimes We simply lacked a platform. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone whose voice deserves to be heard. I'm Aimee Rickabus, and this has been The Manage Her. Until next time, keep leading, keep growing, and keep managing what matters most.